Okay, in this part we are going to discuss about very important terminologies of GDP calculation. The problem of double counting we are going to discuss. We are also going to discuss how to avoid double counting. We are also going to discuss GDP at current price, the concept of GDP at constant price, disposable income. We are going to discuss about national disposable income, private savings. All of these things will be there in this lecture, and this will be the last lecture of the national income segment. Okay, so at first we'll start with problem of double counting. Problem of double counting is basically a very common problem that arises in GDP calculation, that I have given an example in this previous segment also, that suppose if we add the value of the second hand, not the second hand, sorry, if we add the value of intermediate goods, if we add the value of intermediate goods in GDP, then double counting can arise. The first question will be how double counting, the problem of double counting can arise in GDP calculation. So the answer is, when we are adding the value of intermediate consumption, when we are adding the value of intermediate goods in calculation, in the GDP calculation, then double counting problem can arise. Okay, how? Suppose price of a leather is 200 rupees, and by this leather a producer has made a bag, and the price of the bag is 450 rupees. Well, this leather is what? This leather is basically a intermediate good, as it is not ready for the consumption, and this will be used to make a final good. This bag is what? It is a final good. Now, if this intermediate good is added to GDP, and suppose there are some other things also in the economy for our better understanding. Suppose there are eggs in the economy. Eggs, the worth of eggs are 20 rupees. Suppose there is a cricket bat, worth of the cricket bat is 2000 rupees, and we assume that there are only these things in the economy. Now if I add this and try to find out GDP, and if I don't add the intermediate good, if I only add the final goods in GDP, then what will be GDP? GDP at market price will be basically the sum of the all sum of the values of all the outputs, that are, or sum of the values of all final consumption, all the values of the final consumption. So what will be GDP at market price? If I don't consider the intermediate good, then the GDP at market price will be 2000 plus 450 plus 20, so it will be 2470. If I add, or if I consider the intermediate good also, then GDP will be 2670. How and why? Now this how and why will be answered by this thing, that in case of intermediate good, in case of the first method, the price of bag was there, 450 was there, and within that price of bag, this price of leather, the cost of leather or the value of leather was also there, because the price of bag is 450, it is made up of price of leather, that is 200, plus the wage of the labor, that is 20, plus the wage of other inputs, plus the cost of other inputs, that is suppose 230, right? So my point is here that this 200 rupees, which is basically the cost or the value of the intermediate good leather, was already there in this price of the bag or in this value of the bag. Now if we again count this value of intermediate good or value of leather, then there will be a problem of double counting. This 200 rupees is double counted. It is counted twice, right? Because this is 2470 GDP plus 200. right? In this way we have obtained this 2670 when we are considering the intermediate consumption also. Now within this 2470, that is the price of bag, that is sorry, within this 2470 we have the price of bag, that is sorry, that is 450. We have the price of eggs, that is 20. We have the price of the bat, that is 2000. Now the point is that within this 450 of the price of the bag or of the value of the bag, the price of leather or value of leather, that is 200 rupees, is included, is present. Now if I again add this 200 rupees, that is the value of leather or value of the intermediate good, then that 200 rupees basically double counted. It is counted here once in the value of the bag and it is counted here again. So basically this 200 rupees is double counted and GDP will be shown 2670, which will not be accurate, the accurate GDP is 2470. So this is the problem of double counting that arises if we use or if we take the calculation of the value of the intermediate goods. If we add the value of the intermediate goods in GDP, then this problem of double counting can arise. How to avoid double counting? For avoiding double counting, we should never use the income method. If we are using the income method, then the problem of double counting can arise. If we use this output method, final output method and value addition method, which is also known as product method, then we can get rid of the problem of double counting. Okay, GDP at current price and GDP at constant price. I will give you a very simple example by which you will get a proper idea of GDP at current price and GDP at constant price. So basically, what is GDP? We have already discussed about how to calculate GDP, that is okay, but my now simple point is what is GDP. So GDP is basically how much amount of final goods. Suppose in the entire economy there are 300, suppose for our simplicity we don't consider multi commodity economy, we consider one commodity economy. One commodity economy means in the entire economy there are only one commodity, one final good. We don't consider that there are multiple final goods in the economy. If there are multiple commodities or multiple final goods, even then we can do this, but for our simplicity I am assuming that there is only one commodity in the economy and the quantity of that commodity sold in a financial year is 300 and the price of that commodity is 20. So what will be our GDP? In that case our GDP is nothing but it is the value of all the final goods sold in the economy in a financial year. Value of all the final goods sold in a economy in a financial year. So how to find out this value? For finding out this value of all the financial good, for finding out this value of all the final goods and service sold in a economy during a year, we have to just multiply this 300 into 20. That is 300 is basically the quantity and 20 is basically the price. So it will be 6000. So how to calculate GDP? It is Q into P, or we can also write it as P into Q. Right? If there are multiple commodities in the economy, you have to do it again and again. P into Q plus again P into Q. Here suppose we have another commodity in the economy, that is here suppose this is bag and this is suppose cricket bag, this is cricket bat, and the quantity of the cricket bag is suppose 200 sold in the economy and price is 2000. So it is 200 and it is 2000 and we have to calculate that also, and in this way we have to calculate this for all the products, for all the commodities or for all the final goods sustaining in the economy, we have to calculate it, and after calculating it we will get the GDP at market price, right? So we can actually write the GDP at market price in a simpler way. How can we write it? We can write GDP at market price in a simpler way by just showing it as P into Q. By just showing it as P into Q. Okay. Now, so for our simplicity, I am just keeping it as it is, and I don't consider this cricket bag here. Let me just remove it. Okay. Now, suppose this is year 2025. The commodity of bags sold is 300, the price is 20. Now, this is basically GDP at market price obviously, but GDP at market price of 2025. How much? It is 20 into 300, that is 6,000 rupees. Now, tell me one thing. This GDP at market price, what is the current year going on? The current year is going on, the current year which is going on currently is 2025, and this GDP is calculated on the basis of the price of current year. Obviously, right? This GDP at market price is calculated on the basis of the current year, that is 2025. I am again repeating it. This price is the price of 2025. So can I write this that this is GDP at market price calculated on the price level of 2025, on the price level of 2025. Yes, I can write that. So this is called GDP at current price. Why is it called GDP at current price? Because this GDP is calculated on the basis of current price, or on the basis of the price of the current year. This GDP is calculated on the basis of the price of the current year. That's why it is called GDP at current price. Now my question will be then, what is GDP at constant price? Suppose this is still GDP of at market price of 2025, but now here this is the price of 2025, right? But the price of the commodity, that is bag, in 2024 was not 20 rupees, it was probably 15 rupees. So now if I multiply this GDP at market price, here we have calculated it, this 6,000 rupees, how is it derived? It is derived with price of 2025 into quantity sold at 2025. Price of the bags in 2025 multiplied with quantity of bags sold in 2025. Now if I just multiply the quantity of bags sold in 2025 with the price of 2024, then it will be 15, that is the price of 2024, into 300, that is 4500. So this is the GDP at market price, but this GDP at market price is calculated, this GDP at market price of 2025 is calculated on the basis of the price of 2024, on the price of 2024. So this is nothing but, it is basically GDP at constant price. GDP at constant price. Why is it called GDP at constant price? As we are not taking the current price of the commodities sold. The quantity that is sold is on current year, but the prices that we are taking, the price index or the price value that we are taking of the commodity is not of the current year, it is of one of the previous years. Okay, and that is we call That's why it is called as GDP at constant price. So whenever we are taking the consideration of the year of any previous year, whenever we are considering any previous year, or whenever we are taking the consideration of any other year except the current year, it is known as GDP at constant price. And whenever you are calculating GDP at constant price, the year that you are using, that you are using, or I can say uh, price of which year are you using, price of which year. And 1 minute. Price of which year are you using? If you are using current year, then it is known as GDP at current price, as I have written it here also. GDP at current price. Now if I write it that it has also a different name, let me just clear that also. It has some other name also. It is also known as GDP, or it is also known as nominal GDP. Nominal GDP. Okay, so whenever we are using the current year, whenever for calculating GDP we are using the price of the current year, that is known as GDP at current price. It is also known as nominal GDP. But if you are using the price of some other year, some previous year, for example say 2020, here I have taken the example of 2024, but for example say 2011, then that is known as GDP at constant price. It is also known as real GDP. And one thing more to add, that is this year which is used to calculate this real GDP or GDP at constant price. To calculate this GDP at constant price or real GDP, the year that is used is known as base year. The year, please note it with me, the year that is used, or the price of the year, a little bit modified way, let me just repeat it. The price of the previous year, or let me just write it for you. The price of any previous year, used in calculation of real GDP. That is the base year. That any previous year, in our case 2011, is basically the base year. Okay, so I think it is clear, the concept of base year, the concept of nominal and real GDP. And here it is done also. You can also go through these notes. Okay, all of these things are done here. So this is GDP at current price, GDP at constant price. The differences are also given here. You can go through these notes also. Now we will lead to the concept of GDP deflator. Various numericals can come from this portion. Okay, so this is a very important portion. Okay, so now let us lead to the GDP deflator. Before explaining GDP deflator, let me write 4/2 for you. Can anyone tell me what does it signifies? What 4 by 2 signifies? Or can anyone tell me that what 6 by 3 or 6 by 2 is signifies? Or can anyone tell me what does mm, um, suppose 8 by 2 signifies? It signifies 4 by 2 signifies that numerator is twice than denominator. Right or wrong? You can give multiple interpretations to it, but you cannot deny this interpretation that this is right. 4 by 2 implies that numerator is twice than denominator. What 6 by 2 signifies? Numerator is thrice. Numerator is 6, so it is thrice, that is 3 times then denominator. What 8 by 2 signifies? Numerator is 4 times. 4 times then denominator. Numerator is 8, that is 4 times of 2, so numerator is 4 times then denominator. So this 6 by 2, 4 by 2, 8 by 2, all of these are basically ratio. All of these are basically ratio. So my point is now what a ratio signifies. What a ratio signifies, that is my point. So the answer is very simple, that a ratio signifies how much times numerator is then denominator. How much time numerator is then denominator. That is what a ratio tells. If the ratio is 4 by 2, that means it tells numerator is twice than denominator. If the ratio is 6 by 2, that means it tells that numerator is thrice than denominator. If ratio is 8 by 2, that means it tells that the numerator is 4 times than denominator. So a ratio tells how much times numerator is then denominator. If the ratio is suppose I have given enough examples, so I don't think it is required anymore. So now let me explain you with the help of GDP deflator. Let me write you the formula of GDP deflator and you will easily understand this. Nominal GDP by real GDP. Oh, sorry. Nominal GDP by real GDP. This is the formula of GDP deflator. So obviously what will it tell? It will tell how much times numerator is then denominator. So it will tell how much times in place of numerator can I write nominal GDP, obviously. So how much times nominal GDP is then real GDP. Can I write this? Obviously I can write this. So if this GDP deflator, suppose for an example, if I take that nominal GDP is 2000 and real GDP is 1500, and if I calculate it, it will come as 20 by 50, and it will come as, suppose 5, it will come as 4 by 3, it will come as 1.33. So can I tell that nominal GDP is 1.33 times than real GDP? Real GDP. So GDP deflator tells what? GDP deflator tells how much times nominal GDP is then real GDP. And the formula of GDP deflator is also discussed, and you can also go through the numericals of GDP deflator, which are also given here. You can go through this note also. No, you might be little bit confused. GDP at current price is basically what? Nominal GDP, as I have discussed. GDP at constant price is what? Real GDP, as I have discussed, into 100. 100 is basically multiplied by 100, means It is basically the percentage value. It gives us the percentage value. If you don't want to multiply, you cannot multiply. I mean, if you don't want to multiply, you may not multiply. It is absolutely okay and fine to not multiply. GDP and welfare. Well, GDP cannot be a good measure of welfare. GDP in a way basically tells that what is the current valuation of the total goods and service produced in the economy of a country. Okay, see, if GDP is rising, then we can say that in the entire economy or in the entire country there is a rise in the total production of goods and services. If GDP is rising, we can easily say that in the economy there is a total rise in the production of goods and services. But GDP cannot tell about the, there are some backdraws or there are some limitations. The GDP cannot tell the per capita income, that how much each individual of India is getting, how much income or how much earning each individual of India or each individual of a country is getting. Okay, so income inequality. Income inequality means some people are getting very high income and most of the people are getting very low income. Mukesh Ambani and other Adani, all those people are getting a very high income, and all of this, most amount of people living in slums, middle class families and higher middle class or lower class families, they are basically getting a very little income. So this income inequality can't be captured, can't be showed by GDP. So GDP cannot tell us about the welfare. Okay, negative externality can arise because as GDP increases, as I have told you that GDP rises or GDP increases, it simply means that there is a rise in the total production of goods and services. And if the total production of goods and services is increasing in an economy, that simply means the pollution due to that production will also rise. So these are the some connections of GDP and welfare. If GDP rises, welfare will obviously fall. Okay. Now let me go to this thing, national disposable income. This is a very simple concept. Okay, so I just go through this formula. National disposable income is basically, let me understand the concept of disposable income. It is basically the amount of money that you can spend, that is left in your pocket after giving all the taxes, after getting all the subsidies. Suppose your income is 10,000 rupees. I am just giving a very simple example that your income is 10,000 rupees. You have to give 1k to tax, 1k as tax to the government, and by somehow you are getting some transfer payment from some of your friend or some of your teacher or from some of your helping hand, you are getting a payment. Okay, so that is your transfer payment. Suppose it is 2000 rupees. Right, so now what will be your disposable income? It is basically your income. This is your income, but you cannot spend this entire income of 10,000 rupees, as you have to give taxes to the government. So you have to subtract the taxes from your income and you have to add the subsidy or the transfer payment that you are receiving from any of the source. Right, so this let me take this transfer payment as 0.5k or 500 rupees. 500 rupees, I am writing it as 0.5k. So it is basically 9.5k. 9.5k is basically the amount of disposable income that you have. So it is individual disposable income. Individual disposable income means the amount of money that a person can spend, can potentially spend. It is calculated how? After subtracting the taxes and adding the transfer payments, this amount of money a person is left with. This is what we call as disposable income. Now how to calculate this national income? The same concept. In this case we are just going to apply it in a national sense. Here it was in an individual sense, now in national sense. So it is national income plus net indirect tax plus net transfer payment from rest of the world. Okay, here tax is not subtracted, but let me tell you that how net indirect tax is actually arrived. So net indirect tax is basically subsidy minus tax. So just put subsidy minus tax in place of net indirect tax, and you will get an idea that it is basically national income plus subsidy minus tax plus net transfer payment from the rest of the world. That is India getting any kind of transfer, any kind of payment from the rest of the world. That can be in the form of when there is cyclone or earthquake or any kind of disaster, any kind of war, then we basically relief fund, right? There are relief funds that are coming from different countries. That is what you know as net transfer payment from the rest of the world. Okay, and there is another simple concept, that is private income. You can easily go through this. I am not explaining it anymore. It is a very simple concept. Okay, thank you.